Thank you, Zoom. All right, so we do have a sponsor for today's event, Virginia Mason Franciscan Health and Business Health Trust. So they're allowing us to continue to provide this programming to our members and non-members at no cost. We just want you all to be as informed and ready as possible to implement this new verification order in the next couple of weeks. So I now will welcome our moderator. So Christina Hudson, CEO of One Redmond and the founding partner of One Eastside, who were also our promotional partners for this event, along with Seattle Southside Chamber, will be leading us through the rest of the program. So Christina, take it away.
Sure. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. Our team first is very proud to partner with the Seattle Metro Chamber and the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce as we really work together to support our business communities. For those of you who don't know, One Eastside Spark is a regional recovery and resiliency center that's funded by grant dollars. And the goal of these programs are really to help our businesses thrive and withstand future economic crises. And it's through collaborations and partnerships like this where we can all work together to help as many businesses as possible. So we'll go ahead and get started with our program. Today, we have Isabel Babich and Carla Leonardi from Cafe Lago, and we have Ryan Hartman from Penny Arcade. So I'm going to start off with some questions for everyone. And maybe we'll start off with let's do Carla. Can you tell us a little bit about your decision to implement a vaccine verification policy for your business?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We decided back in August, I believe it was August 5th, to implement the policy. And it was completely employee driven. The back of the house, the kitchen cooks and the managers from the front of the house came to me and said, can we do this? And my first thought was, oh gosh, this is a can of worms. Like how are our customers going to react? How are we going to do it? But after hearing their reasons and their concerns about their health and the health of their families, a lot of them have little kids at home who can't be vaccinated. It became really obvious to me that this is something that we should try. So yeah, that was how we started. The employees got together and said, Carla, would you do this? And we did it.
All right, I'm going to turn, Isabel, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it was, hopefully my internet connection is all right here. It was really great to hear from Carla directly that she would be implementing this. It just it happened one day and it felt normal, and it made me feel a lot safer going to work every day. Especially I have immunocompromised family members. So it made me feel better going to work every day.
Great. Now I'm going to ask Ryan the same question. And Ryan, I know we talked at the top, you're from Penny Arcade. You want to tell everyone what Penny Arcade does so they have it well framed?
Yeah, I mean, Penny Arcade, we are essentially a video game media adjacent company. One of the things we're most known for is the Penny Arcade Expo, which is PAX. It's the largest consumer video game convention in the United States. We do 5 of them a year. And the one we just completed is the hometown one, because I mean, Penny Arcade is based out of Redmond. Our hometown show in Seattle just took place over Memorial Day weekend or Labor Day. And we are in the midst right now of planning our Philadelphia show in December. But yeah, early on, it's funny because the timeline on an event, this is not an analogous one-to-one, but like there were a lot of lessons learned with this. In doing an event that is 60,000 people, this was about half of what a normal sized PAX was for us, still a massive event at 60,000. Tickets planning for that had to happen months in advance. We were forecasting things in the spring, and I mean, we all remember how things were in June. Things in June, case levels were low. There was no Delta in June. Things were entirely different than what they were in August. But even early on, we had decided, and we had heard from our fan base that they were very health and safety minded, and they were very sensitive to all these things, and we were as well. So even when it was like, you don't have to wear masks indoors, we were like mandatory mask indoors. But where we did have some early issue plannings, and this was early summer, late spring, was about the vaccine mandate. We were enacting a testing policy at the time, which was ahead of the curve because no one was even doing masks at that point. And then thankfully, because we were one step ahead, we were able to get the vaccine stuff sorted out with the venue and the staff. There's a lot of agreements we had to reach with everyone working the building beyond, and then the exhibitors and things like that. And we were able to implement a vaccine policy before August, before all the Delta stuff hit. And it was warmly received. And I will say that it was a nice test case for us in our next show in Philadelphia. We are removing the prove a negative test. There was like a window where if you were show up with a doctor's note, an official doctor's test that we could verify you were able to come in without a vaccine. We're removing that and just doing vaccine across the board. Easier messaging also.
Great, thank you. And I like how you both of your organizations were listening to your customers and your staff too, right? Because that's really important. Small businesses can't do anything without the staff to help them get to where they need to go. So the next question is about your current verification process. Were there logistical challenges that you had to manage? How did you do it? So Carla and Isabel, I'll throw the baton to you.
Yeah, the first thing we had to do was call everyone on our reservation list. Seemed obvious enough, for the next few weeks out, because we kind of sprung it on everyone. We decided to do it on a Thursday. We were going to start it on a Friday. So Isabel and her coworkers had to just, get on the phone and let everybody know. The second thing we had to do is get very concise messaging out on every way we could, like on our social media, on our website, on our reservation app thing. Was really sure to make it very, very clear to future reservations that this would be required. And then we also did the thing where you put the sign in the window that says you can't come in unless you've got the vaccine. So those were the logistical challenges. And Isabel, do you remember any others that you had to do?
I think you covered it. That was about what we did.
I always mute in between. I forgot to unmute there. Sorry about that. Okay, throwing it back to you, Ryan. What is your current verification process and the logistical challenges that you had to manage?
Yeah, I mean, if there is one point of pride I have on how we rolled all this out is we were ahead of the curve and we were implementing these things and going above whatever mandates there were and whatever we were required to do. And that was a lot of that came from the fan base. So yeah, we did the face coverings. We had reduced capacity, distancing, cleaning staffs, cleaning the building 24/7. And then when we finally got to do the vaccine mandate, we brought in a third party company that kind of helped us just from a manpower standpoint, because we had to facilitate an entirely new process for people. Normally it's you show up to the show, you get your badge, or it was already mailed to you and you're good to go. But here, badge was one level of access, but then it was also we needed to verify that everyone was vaccinated. You had to get a wristband. You had to bring your ID. And we had this 15-page document that we had put together of things to look for, because also people are coming from out of state. So not everyone's vaccine stuff looks the same. Not everyone, if they were coming from New York, New York has an app system. So we had to get all of the potential hiccups from any state someone might be coming from and what everyone's ID looks like so that you could just quickly reference, here's the info you need against the other thing. And I know this firsthand because we put this whole plan together, ironed it out as best we could. And then the first day we hired an entire staff, a secondary staff, in addition to our security, just to do this. This was their one job. Check vaccine verification against IDs, give them a wristband, tell them all our process, and then on to the next one as quick as possible. And they were only booked until 6, but we had told fans that they could go until 8. So it was kind of all hands on deck. I actually had to man that station for an hour while we were kind of scrambling to fix that little problem. So I got a trial by fire in our whole how well our process worked. But yeah, I mean, that was the one big hiccup, was anyone traveling from out of state. if it was just like, if we knew everyone was coming from Washington, it would have been an entirely different, probably easier process. But it was still smooth sailing. Other than that one little weird manpower thing the first day, it was totally fine.
And just to follow on to that, Ryan, once they were through, did you give them like a bracelet or something so you didn't have to check them again? Because I'm sure events people go in and out a bit.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So we had a wristband. They were the cloth wristbands with the ties that won't allow it to be taken off. If you lose your wristband, you had to go get another one. And then if you did come in with the texting protocol, so within 48 hours with a negative PCR test administered by a doctor, you brought all that in, because like home tests couldn't count because we don't know if you took it. We don't know when you took it, right? So it had to be like at a specific center in Seattle. You would get a colored band, and then we would basically have to give you a new band each day for that sort of that. You had to like have a rolling verification. But once you got the vaccine one, it was like a one-time check. And I can say like 96% of our 60,000 attendees were vaccine. And it was a lot. It wasn't as many, like there wasn't as many people that were like, oh, I don't want this. I mean, and again, our fan base, it was very sensitive to this stuff, but it was a lot of kids. If you're under 12, you can't get the vaccine. So pretty much anyone who had a non-vaccine testing way into the show, it was because they were under 12.
That makes sense. All right. So on to our next question. So Carla and Isabel, how did you communicate the decision to your staff and prepare them to enforce the policy? And in all that, I'd love to know what the most common questions were that your staff had for you.
Sure. I mean, because it was, staff driven, it was a little bit easier to communicate it all because they're all coming to me. But, that said, we have such a small operation compared to what Ryan's dealing with, but, it's just a matter of phone call and texting all the staff and telling them what the new policy is. And there was, absolute total 100% support in it. So that was great. And then the host which Isabel should address, they're the people who have on the front lines of this whole thing. So we're asking a lot of our hosts to be the bouncer at the door. So far everyone we've had, all the hosts are just like, sure, like as if it's normal, like Isabel mentioned before. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
Isabel?
definitely. It's not just me, a couple other individuals who also host at Cafe Lago, and we all picked it up very quickly and took it on as a new role as well to add to the list.
Yeah, and the questions were sort of, do we accept a photo of the vaccine? And that's a yes. What if there's just one vax out of two? Those logistical questions of how do we deal with a specific individual's issues.
So more like process and procedures, like here's step one, and if you get this, then you go to there. So I get that. I know, Ryan, you talked a little bit about this, that you had to bring on additional teams to do that. How did you, I know you went in and got all this research and information from other states and what their vaccine cards looks like. What, I guess, since you've kind of already covered it, tell us what you didn't cover, I guess. And also the most common questions you received from the folks that you hired as well as your staff.
Yeah, I mean, from a staff perspective, it's multifaceted with an event, like something as large as a convention for a weekend, because we have like our permanent staff that's working on the show and building it in the months leading up to it. But we also have like a volunteer staff they're not even volunteer because they are paid, but like the support staff that show up and just work it for the weekend. And there are like, 500 to 1,000 of them on a given show. And then there's also like third-party security, third-party vendors and stuff that we hire for that weekend as well. So there's kind of like multiple different camps. But yeah, everyone internally was on board with this from the word go. We have really heard it from our volunteer staff, which we call our enforcers. The enforcer community really wanted this. And when we were implementing the checks, like I said, we kind of ironed out a plan, and it went really well. I'm very happy with how it went. And then like beyond that, there was, I'm sorry, I might be jumping questions too. Were you, I was about to say how we dealt with people who didn't want to, if there was
Oh.
any conflict.
That will be coming up in another
Okay.
question. So yes. All right, well, let's go ahead and actually, I'm going to ask this question to Isabel. What has your experience been like on the front line of this policy and how customers have reacted?
Yeah, primarily it's been incredibly positive. At first, I was a little worried that there would be some folks that just didn't agree and wanted to let me know. But personally, I haven't experienced anybody very aggressive. I know one of my coworkers who also hosts, she had one experience where a couple, I believe they were from out of town, and they yelled in her face and got a little aggressive, but ended up leaving. But for the most part, a lot of folks that are coming into Cafe Lago are regulars and care about the community that they live in and care about the restaurant. And so they want to do whatever is best and safe for everybody. And a lot of folks that come to Lago are older folks. And so they want a place to eat that is safe, that they can enjoy. And people really like to let me know how happy they are that we have this policy. I get more positive reactions when I ask to see their vaccine card than negative.
That's great. I'm going to do a follow-on question to that. So you were talking about your regulars. So do you check your regulars vaccine card every time they come in, or do you have a process of identifying those folks?
Yeah, I think we are in kind of a process of putting notes in the system for regulars that come in individually, but regulars will come in with different people sometimes. And so if they come in with a group of folks, like, all right, I will have to look at all of your vaccine cards this time around. But if it's just a regular coming in, just a couple, just two folks, I'll let them in because we'll put a note in the system.
Got it. So the documentation that maybe you're keeping on your regulars is just kind of in your system, but you're still checking it every day for that. Okay.
Just a little note that says they are indeed vaccinated, because some folks come in multiple times a week and it's, hey, how's it going again?
I know I get coffee multiple times a week, so I get that. All right, so Ryan, I think we're leading into to where the space you were going during the last question, and it kind of plays off what Isabel was saying as well, about what if customers refuse to comply, and the plans that you created or are creating now maybe for de-escalation of any situation.
Yeah, so there was there was an initial overall when we made this, because this was an evolving process with this show, this was a very unique situation with West. So we put tickets on sale and we didn't initially say you needed a vaccine, then we changed it along the way. So there were some people who canceled their badges, but it was very few. In terms of on-site, because we hammered the messaging and we were telling everyone over and over and over and over, everyone that got on site was overall pretty cool about it. We did develop a whole de-escalation plan for it. The main thing was I didn't want our volunteers and enforcer staff to bear the brunt of any of this. So it was an immediate, anyone ever gives anyone static, you escalate it to me, you escalate it to permanent staff, and then we'll get security involved. You don't have to be the bad guy. You don't have to yell at anyone if they don't have their wristband or something. That's not, I didn't want them to have to bear that brunt. But that being said, I think it happened like once or twice. We did have a little pushback from certain exhibitors, because there's a difference with an attendee knows what they know what the state of the world is, and they say, I'm making this choice. I know the quote unquote risks I'm running going to a crowded event, but I want to go, and I will pay the money. I will fly there. I will do it. But an exhibitor is like, well, I work at a video game company and they're sending me here to man a booth. They're in a little weirder position. So it's like we did have some interactions and some fears to assuage with those folks. But on the whole, it overall went really well. And it was a very easy process to implement. And a lot of the things that we were worried about, we over prepared and didn't have to implement, half of the things that we were worried about. And I will say that just this is anecdotal, but we also should just realize, and I travel a lot, and I had to go to an event right after West, and I had a lot of friends and staff come in from out of town, and everyone was like, wow, Seattle's great. After the event, when they would leave the event, people are still wearing their masks on the street. I go to a restaurant, people are still wearing masks. That's awesome. My friends in New York are like, they don't really, it's not like that. It's a little bit on the street. And then I had to go to Indianapolis right after this show, and it's like the Wild West there. No one's wearing anything. It's crazy. So it's like we are in a nice little bubble here, and we should all just take a minute to appreciate that, having seen a lot of crazy other cities.
I just got back from a conference myself, so I totally hear
Yeah.
what you're saying. I'm like, where's the masks?
Yeah, Indianapolis was really, I walked into a restaurant with a mask on, and they were looking at me like I had two heads. I'm like, all right.
So, right, that's really great information. And you were fortunate because you were able to have like extra staff. And like, Carla and Isabel, I know, staff is really hard to find right now for our small businesses. So I'd love to like hear how your plans for de-escalation, if and when it happens.
Yeah, I wish we could afford a bouncer or someone to stand by Isabel and be the muscle. But for now, we have our cooks are on board. Like all you have to do is give them a look and they'll come out. Our managers, stands probably 10 or 15 feet away from Isabel. So everyone is on board to help out with it. We do live in a lovely little neighborhood of Montlake in a bubble where a lot of, bad stuff doesn't happen. It's not a nightly occurrence. If we have a couple people get angry, they basically just leave. Through the years that we've been open for 31 years, and through all those years, there's been a handful of like hangry customers at the door. And I feel like we would treat someone who is anti-vax in the same way we treat the hangry customer. You just try to de-escalate and be nice as you can, as understanding as you can, but ultimately they have to leave.
Yeah, I'm wondering also, I've been talking with some other groups around the region about like the messaging, like how you act, like for the new person who's hearing for the first time, I need to verify your Vax card. What sort of messaging, Carla and Isabel, do you use when you're asking for it? Because this was your decision to do the vaccination card checks, correct? Coming soon, it's a mandate, correct? So there could be different messaging there. Is there anything that you would recommend to our audience as they're giving that initial request or command or mandate, I guess? Like how do you deliver that message? And maybe this is an Isabel question.
Yeah, for the most part, I try to keep the whole experience positive because it is inherently just a little uncomfortable. I'm looking at a medical document that you're showing me. And so I say like, hi folks, I need to see some proof of vaccination at the door and get them seated, just kind of keep it nice and quick. And usually people have it out and ready. I feel just like a bouncer at a bar, just take a quick look and we're good.
Oh, good. And do you have physical signs up too?
We do have a small sign just on our front door,
Okay.
but for the most part, they're greeted by me and I ask for it.
All right, perfect. And I know, Ryan, we talked about a lot of your all your awareness around it. So everybody seemed like they were well versed in what was to come when they entered PAX. So Carla, this next question is for you. Have you seen any impact on your sales because of this policy?
Yeah, I mean, it's within the context of COVID and how business is during COVID, it's really hard to see any kind of subtle impact that the policy has had since August, because everything's kind of we don't know. All of the regular ways the business used to act in previous years have changed. Definitely business has not gone down since August, since we started. Definitely not. So my gut feeling is no, it hasn't affected us. I've personally witnessed, several parties be turned away at the door, and that hurts. As a restaurateur, you hate to see it. But on a couple levels, because number one, I like to be, I'm in the hospitality business. I want people to come in and feel nice and, enter my house and have dinner and, have a nice time. So it hurts on that level. It hurts on a financial level, but ultimately it's for the good of all of us. So I just have to accept that and let it go.
All right, a question, I think, and Ryan, you may have, I don't know, you may have encountered this, and Carla and Isabel, I don't know, but have you had any, tell us about any situation where you had to deal with someone with English as a second language, and how you're able to communicate, and has that ever come up? And if so, what did you do about it?
I haven't had that. Isabel, have you?
No, I've had a lot of folks show me vaccine cards from other countries, but no one with English as a second language.
Okay, great. And Ryan, I don't know if you had any external, I know you have a lot of visitors from out of the country. I didn't know if you guys came across this at all.
Yeah, I mean, historically we do, and we do have protocols. Like we have a pretty deep staff, so we can usually handle these. There weren't a lot of international travelers for this, so it wasn't it's ironically not a problem, but it's something we deal with on a normal show that we actually didn't have to here, because most international travel borders were shut down. So we didn't have a lot of people coming from, we usually have a lot of developers from like South Pacific and from Japan and stuff like that. And none of them came this year. So it wasn't really actually an issue with having to stack that on top of like a vaccine verification.
Got it. And I want to note that, that there are toolkits being developed, and I think they've been putting some links in the chat box. So there will be signage and information for those businesses that will need these signs translated into different languages. So, and I want to remind you, I got one more question, but please use the Q&A box to ask your questions to our panelists here. We'd love to hear from you. So we're kind of nearing the end of our questions that we had prepared. So having gone through this process, what is your top advice for other restaurants and businesses who are about to start this whole vaccine verification for their customers? And Carla and Isabel, we'll start with you.
Well, I'd say number one, talk to your staff, make sure they're all on board, and make sure your policy is very, very clearly stated to them. Number two, post your policy so that your guests can see before they arrive what's expected. So, post it on your website, on your social, on your reservation thing. And the third thing I would say is stick to your policy. When a customer calls with a sad story, like, oh, I lost my card, I don't have proof, whatever, I'm getting a vaccine next week, I have to be very like, I'm sorry, this is our policy. And that's so not like me. I would rather say, please come in. But the best thing to do is stick to the policy and be clear about it. Isabel,
do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, Carla mentioned just sticking to the policy. Just if I can't make this one exception for you, because then it wouldn't be fair for everyone else. But also keep it positive, the whole experience, because it is a little, as I said, a little uncomfortable. Because it's new for everybody. A lot of folks come up and they're like, oh, this is so weird, I'm not used to doing this. So just keep it lighthearted and whatnot if you are physically checking people's vaccine cards when they enter your business. Because keeping it positive, because we're all in this together, right? So.
Ryan, I turn to you. What are your top advice for those that are just about to go through this process?
Yeah, I think Carla laid it out really well. I mean, definitely develop a plan. I mean, part of this is, I would say the single most important thing is always set and manage expectations. And not just for this, for anything. I mean, I found that like at a show, people will wait in a line for 3 hours if they know they'll get in. It's like, but they'll get mad if they're waiting in a line and they wait for 3 hours and then you cap it and you tell them they can't get in. It's like always just set expectations. I would just say like, and then just in general, like cross-channel marketing, it's just good advice at all times. Like, don't just put like, get a process in place and put it on the website, put signs up outside, do it in multiple avenues, because you never know how a customer is going to get back to the base, right? But always just like, so no one can plead ignorance when they get there. And it's just like, get that expectation ironed out well before anyone comes near the place. And that will save a lot of headaches, and it'll also mitigate a lot of issues.
Sorry, did it again. Forgot to take the mute off. We're getting some question in, which is great. So our first question in the Q&A box asks, can ID check and vaccine check happen at the same time if you're checking 21 and over? If so, can you verify them against each other? I don't know if you all check ages or identification, but I will ask Carla and Isabel first.
Well, I suppose it could happen at the door that you would want to cross-check with an ID, but normally that happens at the table at our restaurant if someone who looks underage needs a drink, wants a drink. So I don't know. I'm not sure if you could just check both and then call it a day.
And it's not required by the new mandate. You do not have to check the ID against the vaccination card at this point, as far as we know, unless anything changes. That is not a requirement, but I assume it would be your option. Ryan, I don't know, did you check IDs with vaccine cards or just vaccine cards?
We checked vaccine cards against IDs just to verify, person is who is on the card. And then there was this weird edge case where you would have people, and we developed a plan for it. So if you're under 12, you're not vaccinated. We all know that because kids can't get it right now. But there could be a 13, 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, and they could be vaccinated and not have a driver's license. So how do you verify that kid is this vaccine card? So we had a policy for how the parents could verify the child essentially. And those were like a weird edge case we had to think about early on. And I mean, fingers crossed that the FDA stuff will pass for kids soon, and then it'll be 5 and up. But yeah, those are things you will probably have to consider.
Mm-hmm. We have another question here that I got in the chat box. So put it in the Q&A when you're putting your Q&A questions in there. But in the chat box, they were asking about Carla and Isabel, if you had outdoor seating. And if that was an option to those that were not vaccinated.
Sadly, no, we don't have a possibility for outdoor seating. We do have a section of the restaurant that is mainly used for our takeaway program that we offer to people, say, who only have had one vaccine. They can sit in Siberia. No, I'm kidding. It's not really Siberia, but it's farther away than everyone else. And we ask them to keep their mask on unless they're actually eating.
Oh, got it. But it's still indoors, but so you encourage takeout for those that are. Absolutely. And when you meant one vaccine, you meant one dose of the two? Right. Yeah. Because if they had the J&J one shot, they're considered fully vaccinated.
No, that's not what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to clarify. Ryan, do you have anything? I guess you guys were all contained in one unit, so that doesn't really apply to you, that question. So.
Yeah, I mean, we use the entire convention center, the Sheraton. We usually use about 9 buildings, including the convention center. And we scaled it down to 6 this time. But yeah, I mean, so there were people traveling between buildings, and we were doing, like, once you had the wristband, you were all set. Like, that was the first crux. But yeah, other than that, pretty much everything was spread out as much as possible. But there wasn't much outdoor venue space this time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's a question that came in the chat box again saying, the mandate states we cannot ask for IDs. How will you handle this? And I'm wondering if that was in response to the earlier question. And I don't know. I think if you're checking IDs for being of age to go into an establishment, you would need to do both at the same time. But that is an excellent FAQ. And if we can't get a solid answer from King County, I'm sure the Seattle Chamber folks will we'll get that answered. Let's see. Anybody else have any questions? Let me check our Q&A box. All right, and let me check the chat box. I don't think we have any additional questions. Hey, Lee, do you have any questions on your end?
I do not see any that came directly to me. I don't know, Carla and Isabel, maybe it would be kind of obvious for folks who have come into a restaurant where it's been checked, but could you just quickly explain how you do it at the door? I mean, is it right when they walk in? Is it as they're walking to their table? If you could just give more details on that, maybe give folks some ideas for how they might, make it work in their space.
Yeah, our host stand is right near the door. We have a small entryway, and folks walk in, and I'm very, very much present and obvious there to guide them to their table. And I'll ask them if they have a reservation, and then get that sorted out. And then I will ask for a vaccine, and then after that, take them to their table. I always try to check with reservation first, because then if they don't have a reservation, that's a whole other card game. But yeah, for the most part, I just kind of keep it a part of the dialogue of reservation. Are we over 21? We can sit in this bar section.
So Ryan, this next question is for you. It says, how did Ryan find the vaccine card and ID info from other states? So inquiring minds want to know your process.
Yeah, so we had an outside group help us with this, and we had actually looked, we early on, we had actually Clear, if you're familiar with Clear, who does the airport travel, they are implementing a nationwide sort of service where they will do it. They will do all the verification stuff. At least in the event space. I don't know how this would work in like other areas. But they seem to be a great solution for this problem in a one-stop shop. However, at the time, they were not ready. I think they are starting to get to the national level. They were kind of a state by state, like they were functional in New York, but not in Washington sort of thing. But we are going to be using them in Philadelphia. So there was another company, and I apologize because I don't know them off the top of my head, that we consulted with, and that got us this information of, and it was like with them and our lawyers, like on what we were legally allowed to ask and what we should ask. And it was just this one giant like doc of like, here are the different things you might run across. 90% of them was just what you would expect a normal vaccine card would be. But I did have a couple people, like I said, from New York. There's like a New York mobile app, Passport. And then it was just like how to quick access it in there. A couple different states have a couple other weird things like that. And then just knowing what to look for on a given state's ID, because they're all different.
So I was in a conversation with a gym that had a membership. So one of their solutions was they were taking copies of the vaccination ID cards and putting them in their file so they didn't have to show it every time. And, Ryan, I'm going to put this question to you. Is that so? Because you're talking about the legality of it, I'm not certain if you can actually keep a copy of someone's vaccine card in your files. It's more of a checkbox that you saw it. Do you have any insight on that by chance?
No, I mean, so in our scenario, right, it's like we have a consumer for 4 days and then we don't see them again. And then the next one is going to be months away in a different state. We'll purge everything and redo it all again. But like that's kind of what it was. It was a one-stop shop. You had to go in before you got your badge or anything. Very first place, we told everyone to go. All signage pointed everyone there. We sent them physical mailers, like, here's what to do the day you come to the show. We sent them emails. We put signs everywhere. We posted it all on social. And even with that, there were always still a couple people asking questions, but it was like, go to the Sheraton first. Get your vaccine wristband before you do anything, because you're going to need that. You'll never be allowed in any other building at the show. So it's like, once you get that check, then you get the wristband, and then you're good all weekend. So it's like, if you had a membership sort of thing, like a gym or some sort of thing, I do not know the legalities of that, but I would imagine like if you could do a check at once, verify someone's membership platform or like their portfolio thing, and then they're good. So they don't have to do it every time they come back. That seems like that would be like a good solution. Whatever you could do to streamline this whole process.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Let's see. I think there is a note here in the chat that Clear, the company that Ryan was talking about, is going to be at the webinar next week. So there will be a demo of the app. I believe that is something that the county is looking into, which is fantastic. All right. I think I'm going to check some more questions. Hold on one second. I don't see any in the Q&A. Let me check the chat. All right. Well, before I kind of do a wrap up, Ryan, I know you're dealing with big events, but I'm hearing things that I think small businesses can learn from your experiences, like the amount of information that you sent out. Like I'm sure every business has like a mailing list of their regular customers that they could send out saying, here's what's happening, here's what to expect. That over communication message, I think could be something valuable as a takeaway for the small businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of overshare, over deliver, and don't always assume people will approach you from one vector. I can't remember off the top of my head. This is like, I learned this in like marketing in college, but it's like one you'll get 70% increase across two different channels, right? So it's like if you use a mobile app and a website, you will see a 70% increase on just a website, right? And that has, cascading benefits across that's just a normal cross-channel marketing business plan or information dissemination plan. And I have one feed into the other, just so you're making sure you're catching everyone, is always a good idea. And if not for this, then for anything, I don't know, for sales, for new user acquisition, things like that. Like it's always a good idea.
Yeah. And I think, just so everybody knows, I'm sure they already do, but organizations like ours and the Seattle Chamber and the Seattle Southside Chamber, we are doing our best to communicate this message throughout the community. So this hopefully will not be a surprise to everyone, and that they do indeed realize we're all working together to get through the effects of these pandemic. Let's see. I don't have any more questions. So Lee, I'm going to ask you again. Do you have any other ones that you'd like us to say? Otherwise, I can wrap it up early and give some people some time back on their calendars.
I do not have any additional ones. I just wanted to call out again, we are hosting a webinar next Wednesday with King County and Clear, and the Seattle Southside Chamber is doing one next Tuesday that will be focused specifically for hotels. So questions, about revamping people's contracts for your venue and meeting spaces, who's responsible for the actual checking, that sort of thing. So make sure you check those out. Thanks, Christina.
Hey, no problem. And so I guess this concludes our program for today, and giving you about 14 minutes back on your calendars. I want to thank everybody here today, all our speakers, for giving us your time. We really appreciate it because you guys have already been through it. And so this is always really, really good information for our businesses. I want to thank you again to our sponsor, Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. And so until we see you again, this concludes our webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.